Picture this. You've built the ultimate steel vault. I mean, the walls are a foot thick, the mathematical logic behind the locking mechanism is absolutely flawless, and it would take a traditional thief literally a billion years to drill through it. But what if the attacker isn't using a bigger drill? What if instead there's just an invisible entity standing there, silently watching your guards type in the passcode every single day? It's learning the tiny pauses, the sound of the buttons. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a groundbreaking research paper from the Journal of Analytical Science and Technology, and it's all about a profound shift in cybersecurity. We are looking at the AI threat to cryptography.
So that brings us immediately to a pretty uncomfortable question, right? Is our digital trust basically built on a lie? Think about it. The secure little padlock in your browser, your encrypted messages, the digital signatures on multi-million-dollar corporate contracts. They all rely on this one foundational assumption about how digital security works. But as this research reveals, that foundation might be cracking. And it's not because the math is wrong. It's because the real world just doesn't operate in a vacuum.
The core thesis of the source material we're exploring today can be summarized perfectly right here. We are protecting the math, while AI is hacking the system. For decades, cryptographers have focused on building stronger, more elegant mathematical algorithms. But real-world adversaries, especially those armed with artificial intelligence, they've completely stopped trying to break the math directly. Instead, they're attacking the physical and operational environments where that math is actually implemented. It's a fundamental, structural misalignment between what researchers focus on and how real-world attacks actually happen.
Okay, let's dive into this. Consider this staggering statistic derived from expert interviews and industry workshops detailed in the study. A whopping 82% of cybersecurity practitioners attribute private key compromise to AI-augmented optimization and side-channel inference. Only 18% attribute it to legacy systems and misconfigurations. Think about that for a second. This isn't some theoretical, sci-fi future scenario. This is the dominant threat happening right now in operational environments.
Section 1. The Cryptography Myth, the Flawed Assumption. To truly understand this paradigm shift, we first have to dismantle a widely held myth across the tech industry. That's the belief that impenetrable math automatically equals absolute security. Let's look at public key cryptography, or PKC. It's built on a very specific assumption, that security relies on mathematical problems being computationally too hard for adversaries to solve. Think of integer factorization or discrete logarithms. Now, the classical model assumes the adversary is just this static entity, sitting in a basement somewhere, trying to compute an impossibly large number of combinations. It mistakenly assumes the attacker is computationally bounded and, crucially, behaviorally static. But as you'll see, modern adversaries are anything but static. Section 2. Enter the AI adversary, the paradigm shift. The narrative shifts completely when we introduce the true dynamic threat in today's operational environment. Let's look at what artificial intelligence is actually doing to these systems.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer evolution of the threat we're facing. We aren't just dealing with basic computer viruses anymore. First, we have polymorphic malware. This uses AI to mutate its external appearance to evade static detection, like your standard signature-based antivirus, while keeping its core function totally intact. But then we see a massive escalation, fully morphing malware. This doesn't just change how it looks on the outside. It evolves its internal logic, its control flow, and its entire attack strategy in real time based on environmental feedback. It is a learning, adapting adversary that actively optimizes its attacks against cryptographic processes.
Section 3. Hacking the implementation, exploiting the system. So how exactly does this adaptive malware bypass that brilliant math to attack the system itself? Let's break down exactly how this exploitation works in practice.
The closed feedback cycle that makes the machine learning process so devastating is a continuous 4-step loop. Step 1 is observation. The AI just sits there and watches the cryptographic process run. Step 2 is inference. It builds statistical models based on what it sees. Step 3 is action. It tweaks its attack parameters based on those models. And Step 4 is environmental response. It measures how the system reacted, learns from it, and goes right back to Step 1. The adversary continuously learns from the system over time, progressively reducing its own uncertainty, all without ever violating the formal rules of the cryptographic protocol.
And what exactly is it observing during this cycle? Well, it's listening to the tumblers click through what we call side-channel leakages. The malware monitors timing characteristics, like exactly how long a calculation takes. It watches power consumption variability, electromagnetic emissions, acoustic emissions, and memory access patterns. Just by observing these physical and operational artifacts, the AI can piece together the private key. It degrades the entropy, the randomness of the system, without ever actually breaking the underlying mathematical algorithm. It's brilliant, and it's terrifying.
Section 4. Why bigger keys fail. The Band-Aid fixes. Naturally, our traditional reaction to a stronger attacker is to just build a thicker vault door. In cryptography, that means using larger keys. But the research explains exactly why this defensive reaction is completely insufficient against learning algorithms. And this brilliantly illustrates that mindset. Moving from a 64-bit key, 228-bit, up to a massive 512-bit key creates an astronomical, exponentially larger search space. Now, in a traditional brute force attack, where you try every single combination to unlock the data, increasing the key size works perfectly. It makes an exhaustive search computationally impossible.
But here is the critical flaw in that classical logic. Expanding the search space is absolutely useless if AI can just observe implementation artifacts to infer the key directly. AI simply bypasses exhaustive search by reading the system's side channels. If the AI can read the power fluctuations to figure out the exact millisecond a specific calculation happens, it doesn't need to try billions of keys. It can just mathematically infer the correct one. Bigger keys are literally just a band-aid on a broken implementation.
Section 5. The post-quantum illusion, a false sense of security. This brings us to a major concept emerging in cybersecurity right now, and one that's often misunderstood as the ultimate savior: post-quantum cryptography.
So the crucial point is this: post-quantum schemes secure the math, but they inherit the exact same implementation vulnerabilities. Post-quantum cryptography uses incredibly complex new math to stop quantum computers from factoring large numbers. And don't get me wrong, that's a vital step forward. But as this research highlights, these new schemes still rely on memory, processors, and power. They still leak side-channel data. PQC stops quantum computers from breaking the math for sure, but it leaves the side channels wide open to AI exploitation. It is definitely not the silver bullet many assume it to be.
Section 6. Building Adaptive Resilience, the new defense playbook. So, if larger keys and quantum-resistant math aren't enough on their own, what's the actual solution here? The paper outlines a necessary shift from static defense to dynamic resilience.
We strictly need to contrast the outdated algorithm-centric approach with the necessary system-centric security model. In the old model, the focus was firmly on static math and key size. You basically had a deploy-and-forget mindset, assuming trust was permanent once the key was generated. The new reality demands a focus on the dynamic implementation of the crypto. It requires a mindset of continuous monitoring, treating trust as something provisional that must be constantly validated rather than something permanent. Let's move to and see how this builds into actionable design requirements. To match the sheer speed of adversarial learning, systems need continuous entropy monitoring, making sure the randomness is actually random, in real time. We need AI-aware anomaly detection to spot when morphing malware is trying to learn the system's side channels. We also absolutely need dynamic key management, automated trust invalidation the second something looks even a little suspicious, and hardware-backed isolation to physically shield the processes. Bottom line, to beat an adapting AI, your defense must also be adapting. And that leads us to a vital, provocative thought for anyone managing or relying on secure digital infrastructure today. If AI can learn to bypass our absolute strongest math, is your security adapting or just getting older? The landscape of digital trust is literally shifting beneath our feet. And as this research makes undeniably clear, simply trusting the math is no longer an option. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.